Hello friends, this is Vinith. Welcome to my YouTube channel Techies Hub. So today we are just going through one of the PDF related to the Kanban guide for Scrum teams. So we will be going through the video and we will be just uh, checking what are the key areas in the Kanban when we are following the Scrum team. So these are the table of contents. So we have the purpose. So the relation to the Scrum Guide, the definition of Kanban, then Kanban with Scrum theory, Kanban practices, flow-based events, increment, end note, etc. So moving on to the first slide, so our purpose. So the flow-based perspective of Kanban, actually it can enhance and complement the Scrum framework and its implementation. So actually it's a result of collaboration between member of Scrum.org community and the leaders of the Scrum community. So let's start with the Kanban. So what is a Kanban? So Kanban actually it's a strategy. It's for optimizing the flow of value through a process that uses a visual work in progress limited pull system. So actually we will be able to see all the workflow of an item from uh, so actually from its start to its end. So that's the visualization that Kanban provides. And Kanban with Scrum theory. So flow and empiricism. So the central to the definition of Kanban is the concept of flow. So the flow is the movement of value through the product development system. Kanban optimizes flow by improving the overall efficiency, effectiveness, and predictability of a process. So the Scrum is founded empirical process control theory, and the key to empirical process control is the frequency of transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So when Kanban practices are applied to Scrum, so they provide a focus on improving the flow through the feedback loop, optimizing transparency, and the frequency of inspection and adaptation for the both the product and the process. So then we are going to the basic metrics of flow. So actually there are four basic metrics. So those are work in progress, cycle time, work item age, and throughput. So work in progress is something the number of work items started but not finished. So the difference between the work in progress metric and the policies a Scrum team uses to limit work in progress. So the team can use the work in progress metric to provide transparency about their progress towards reducing their work in progress, and actually it can improve their flow. So the cycle time. So amount of elapsed time between when a work item starts and when a work item finishes. Then the work item age. So amount of time between when a work item started and the current time. So it applies to only the in progress items. And the throughput. So the number of work items finished per unit of time. So what is Little's law? So that is the key to governing flow. So actually the Little's law is something like average cycle time is equal to average work in programs by average throughput. So Little's law reveals that in general, for a given process with a given throughput, the more things that you work on at any given time, the longer it is going to take to finish those things. So if the cycle times are too long, the first action Scrum team should consider is lowering work in progress. Most of the other elements are built upon the relationship between work in progress and cycle time. So then we are moving on to the Kanban practices. So the Scrum teams can achieve the flow optimization by using the following four practices. So the visualization of the workflow, limit work in progress, active management of work item in progress, inspecting and adapting the team's definition of workflow. So the definition of workflow. So the four Kanban practices are enabled by the Scrum team's definition of workflow. So this definition represents the Scrum team members' explicit understanding of why their policies are for following the Kanban practices. And the scope of the definition of workflow may span beyond the sprint and the sprint backlog. And then something related to the adaptation and definition of workflow. Then we'll move on to the visualization of the workflow, the Kanban board. So the visualization using the Kanban board is the way the Scrum team makes its workflow transparent. The board's configuration should prompt the right conversation at the right time and proactively suggest opportunities for improvement. So what are the items included in the visualization? So define point at which the Scrum team considers work to have started and to have finished. And definition of the work item, that's individual units of value, uh, knowledge value, then that are flowing through Scrum Team's system. That's mostly product backlog items. Then a definition of the workflow states that the work items flow through from start to finish. Explicit policies about how work flows through each state flow. Then policies for limiting work in progress. So what is this limiting work in progress? So work in progress refers to the work item the Scrum team has started but has not yet finished. So the Scrum teams using Kanban must explicitly limit the number of these work items in progress. A Scrum team can explicitly limit work in progress, however, they see fit but should stick to that limit once established. The primary effect of limiting work in progress is that it creates a pull system. So it's called a pull system because the team starts working on an item only when it's clear and that it has the capacity to do so. So when the work in progress drops below the defined limit, that is a signal to start new work. So this is different from a push system, which demands that work starts on an item whenever it is requested. So active management of the work item in progress. So limiting work in progress is necessary to achieve flow, but it alone is not sufficient. The third practice to establish flow is the active management of work item in progress. So within the sprint, this management by uh, development team can take several forms, including but limited to the following. Make sure that work items are only pulled into the workflow at about the same rate that they leave the workflow. Ensuring work items aren't left to age unnecessarily. Responding quickly to blocked or queued work items as well as those that are exceeding the team's expected cycle time level. So, what is service level expectations? So, a service level expectation forecast how long it should take a given item to flow from start to finish within the Scrum team's workflow. The Scrum team uses its SLE to find active flow issues and to inspect and adapt in case of falling below those expectations. So the SLA itself has two parts, a period of elapsed days and the probability associated with that period. The SLE should be based on a Scrum team's historical cycle time, and once calculated, the Scrum team should make it transparent. So the inspect and adapt the definition of workflow. So the Scrum team uses the existing Scrum events to inspect and adapt its definition of workflow. So thereby it will improve the empiricism and optimizing the values in the Scrum team delivering. So following are the aspects of definition of workflow the Scrum team might adapt. Visualization policies. For example, workflow states, either changing the actual workflow or bringing more transparency to an area in which the team wants to inspect and adapt. How we work policies. So these can directly address an impediment. For example, adjusting work in progress limits and SLEs, changing is the batch size or how often items are pulled between states can have a dramatic impact. So then we are moving to the flow-based event. So Kanban in a Scrum context does not require any additional events to those outlined in the Scrum guide. However, using a flow-based perspective and the use of flow metrics in Scrum events strengthens Scrum's empirical approach. The sprint. The Kanban complementary practices don't replace Scrum sprint. Even in environments where continuous flow is desired or achieved, the sprint is still a cadence or a regular heartbeat for inspection and adaptation of both product and process. So Kanban practices can help development teams improve flow and create an environment where decisions are made just in time throughout the sprint based on inspection and adaptation. Then moving on to sprint planning. A flow-based sprint planning meeting uses flow metrics as an aid for developing the sprint backlog. So actually, for example, using historical throughput to understand the Scrum team's capacity for the next sprint. A daily Scrum. So a flow-based daily Scrum focuses on ensuring The Scrum team is doing everything it can to maintain a consistent flow. While the goal of the daily Scrum remains the same as outlined in the Scrum guide, the meeting itself takes place around the Kanban board and focuses on where flow is lacking and on what actions the Scrum team can take to get it back. So, additional things to consider during a flow based daily Scrum: what work items are blocked and what can the development team do to get them unblocked? What work is flowing slower than expected? What is the work item age of each item in progress? What items have violated or about to violate their SLE, and what can the Scrum team do to get that work completed? Are there any factors that may impact the Scrum team's ability to complete work today that are not represented on the board? Have we learned anything that might change what the Scrum team has planned to work on next? Have we broken our work in progress limit, and what can we do to ensure we can complete the work in progress? Then we have the sprint review. So, Scrum Guide provides a detailed outline of the sprint review. So, inspecting Kanban flow metrics as part of the review can create opportunities for new conversations about monitoring progress towards a goal. Then we have the sprint retrospective. So, a flow based sprint retrospective adds the inspection of flow metrics and analytics to help determine what improvements the Scrum team can make to its process. The Scrum team using Kanban also inspects and adapts the definition of workflow to optimize the flow in the next sprint. And using a cumulative flow diagram to visualize a Scrum team's work in progress, average approximate cycle time and average throughput can be valuable. So, in addition to the sprint retrospective, the Scrum team should consider taking advantage of the process inspection and adaptation opportunities as they emerge throughout the sprint. So, what is an increment then? So, the Scrum requires the team to create a potentially realizable increment of done product every sprint. So, the Scrum's empiricism encourages the creation of multiple realizable increments during the sprint to enable fast inspect and adapt feedback loops. Kanban helps manage the flow of these feedback loops more explicitly and allows the Scrum team to identify bottlenecks, constraints, and impediments for faster or continuous delivery of value. So the end note is like the Scrum is not a process or a technique. It's a framework within which people can address complex adaptive problems while productively and creatively delivering product of the highest possible value. As the Scrum Guide points out, it functions well as a container for other techniques, methodologies, and practices. So that's pretty much about the Kanban guide for Scrum teams. Thanks for watching the video. Have a good day. Bye.